Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Deku Joined the League of Villains. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Endeavor struggled to breathe as his flames began to dissipate. Shiro's words hung on him like a ton of bricks. Tuya. That disgrace was here. Impossible. Tuya is dead, Endeavor said firmly as his flames began to return. He was killed in a villain attack 10 years ago. That wasn't entirely a lie. Ever since the incident where his quirkless failure vanished, Endeavor assumed he was dead. There had been no signs of him being alive. And he checked. He thoroughly searched for his missing offspring, but found no traces of him being alive, so he assumed he wasn't. Now he was hearing he had been at Hades. It was completely absurd. Shiro smirked. He's alive and kicking, I'm afraid, he informed the hero. And very angry to boot. Angry was putting it lightly. The hatred Tuya held for his father was unbelievable. So much that it surprised even him. Then again, considering what Kyoku told him about the boy's life, it made perfect sense. He is dead, Endeavor reaffirmed much harshly, his original flames having reignited. Saying otherwise will not change that. Shiro rolled his eyes. He is alive. Deny it as much as you want, but... Shiro's speech was interrupted by a torrent of flames heading straight for him. Summoning his quirk, Shiro cloaked himself in a sphere of light to shield himself. The flames hit the sphere straight on, but it never wavered. How rude, Shiro thought, mildly annoyed. Oh, well. I was getting tired of talking anyway. As the flames died down, Shiro made the sphere shine even brighter before releasing it outward and blinding Endeavor. Taking advantage of the distraction, Shiro bent the light waves around his body to turn invisible. Although it did not look it, invisibility was one of his more complicated abilities due to the numerous steps involved. It took a lot of focus to make sure the light was constantly bending the way he wanted, such as leaving no shadow nor reflection, and even more for moving around while in that state. People generally assumed he allowed light to pass through his body and make himself completely transparent, but this was not the true case. Although he did do this when first learned to hone his power, it rendered him temporarily blind because his retinas were not receiving light. Additionally, this ability took him 3 years straight to fully master in comparison to his other moves. It was difficult, but thanks to the wisdom of his teacher, he did it. Moving quickly, Shiro came to Endeavor's left side. However, the flame hero could still hear him leading to another burst of fire, albeit not as accurately aimed. Skipping to the side, Shiro leapt up, and as he came just above Endeavor, he brought his foot down on his head. The hero grunted, but before he could retaliate, Shiro became visible again and spun on his right leg to deliver a sidekick enhanced with his quirk that connected straight with Endeavor's chest. The kick included light shooting out of Shiro's foot that sent Endeavor slowly skidding backwards. Despite this, the pro did not fall and held his ground. With his sight returned, Endeavor launched a small fireball at Shiro, who had no time to dodge. The attack landed on his back and caused him to lose his balance, as he fell face first onto the ground. Endeavor then ignited his fist and slammed it into the ground, creating a few small cracks before unleashing fire into them. Raging assault, hell minefield, he shouted. What followed was an intense eruption of flames underground, which created a large violent explosion that was now heading towards Shiro. In a rare moment of surprise, Shiro's eyes widened. Boom. The explosion damaged the entire area and interrupted several fights in the process. Smoke cleared and Shiro was nowhere in sight. Endeavor was briefly worried he might have killed him, but that was quickly dashed. I am probably one of the last people who should be saying this, but you crazy bastard. Endeavor looked up and saw Shiro using light whips to hold himself up by the ceiling. You could have killed someone during that attack, even your own allies. He may have sounded a bit hypocritical there, but usually, when he unleashed his more destructive attacks, he made sure his allies were out of harm's way. Endeavor scoffed. They weren't in any danger. I never release attacks like that when people are around. Really? Shiro responded sarcastically. You sure had no problem releasing them on your son when he lived under your roof. Endeavor's eyes narrowed. Given he had access to Shoto's memories, he likely held knowledge on Tuya's involvement during their training exercises. You do realize how utterly stupid that statement truly is, don't you? Shiro blinked. Given Tuya's flaws, an attack like that would kill him instantly. His flaws? Shiro repeated as he swung to the side where the ground wasn't burnt. You mean being quirkless? What else? Endeavor asked as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Next to being second to All Might, his firstborn being dubbed quirkless was the most embarrassing moment of his life. He was the number 2 hero. Even if his other children's quirks had not been to his liking, Tuya was the most humiliating case because he lacked a quirk in general. Or at least he had. At the very least, no one outside his household knew he was quirkless, which saved him some public face. Except he isn't quirkless, Shiro pointed out. That scar you have is proof. Endeavor's eyes widened. Look, Endeavor, you can deny it all you want, but Tuya is alive, and he is coming for you. I've seen what his quirk can do, and let me tell you, when he kills you with it, the irony will oh so sweet in a number of ways. Could it be true? Endeavor contemplated. Could that mistake really have been here? He didn't want to believe it, but considering what Shiro knew, it made sense. Tuya was the only other person who knew about his scar. He was especially pissed off at that press conference you held to explain the attack on your house and his disappearance. The sympathy you received from it drove him over the edge into what he is today, Shiro explained with a smile. That aside, I can't help but wonder how the public would react if they found out that Tuya was the villain from that story. Endeavor had had enough. He wasn't going to listen anymore. Racing forward, he gathered his power in his fingertips and released several white hot beams at Shiro. Flashfire Fist, Hell Spider. Endeavor shouted. At the same time, Shiro forged several orbs of light and released them from his hands. Rapid Fire Light Orb, he shouted. The two attacks collided, creating several explosions, but neither attack getting through. However, the two enemies stood tall against the force, with neither one submitting to the gale force. Say whatever you want, but it's quite obvious you're just stalling, villain. Endeavor growled as he created a harpoon-like arrow of fire in his hand. Leaning backwards, he threw the arrow at his enemy. Ignited arrow. Unfortunately, Shiro had a similar idea. Using his quirk to create a bow and arrow, Shiro pulled back and fired. Luminous arrow, he shouted. Unlike light spears, Luminous Arrow was stronger because Shiro focused much of his power into a single shot that could pierce anything. The arrows collided and generated an even larger explosion that left both fighters struggling against the gale force wind. When it subsided, the pair stood glaring hatefully at each other. I may be a villain, but at least I'm honest about it. Domestic abuser, Shiro said the last words with extra spite. Endeavor glared at him with extreme hatred. Oh, what? Did you think I didn't know? I knew, Shiro barked. I investigate the backgrounds of all heroes of interest to see if there's any dirt on them. Although you were particularly tricky. Hence, why I spoke with your wife. Endeavor's eyes widened. What did you? Relax, I never laid a finger on her. I did have my colleague examine her memories, and let me tell you, I was shocked. You are not the first hero to abuse his family, but your reasons for doing were way different than the others. Then Tuya came along, as did Shoto, and I had even more of a reason to hate you, Shiro explained with a harsh look. You illicit a quirk marriage which is considered taboo, abused your wife, abused your sons, neglected your other children because you deemed them failures, all for the sake of surpassing a complete idiot as the #1 hero. Shut up. Endeavor roared. You don't a damn thing about me. I know enough, Shiro countered. You are no hero, Enji Todoroki. You are nothing more than a villain performing public service for those who choose to look the other way. It's no wonder you could never defeat All Might. After all, he's #1 and you are #2, now and forevermore. Number two. Endeavor felt something snap inside him upon hearing those words. Rage coursed through his body in ways he had felt before, but never this strongly. He was sick of being called #2 over and over again. He worked hard to become #1, not just because he felt he earned it, but because he deserved it. Suddenly, he felt a desire to hurt Shiro in ways he never had before. He wanted to incinerate him, to roast him from inside out, and just barely kill him. Flames danced around his body as the temperature of the area increased. While he had been told to capture Shiro, his next attack would decide if he lived or died. Death may have been better considering what he knew, but it was highly unlikely the public would believe a despicable slave trader over a hero like him. Shiro could see he was getting ready to launch a fierce attack, however, so was he. Flipping backwards, he dug rays of light into the walls, while he pulled himself back like a slingshot. Endeavor threw his fists back while concentrating his flames into flames before throwing them forward. Flashfire Fist, Hell's Curtain. He screamed. A massive blanket of flames erupted from the hero and shot straight towards Shiro. At the same time, Shiro propelled himself forward headfirst as his body began to spin rapidly, the speed of which increased thanks to his quirk, with his body accumulating light around him. If one were to look at him now, they would think he was a bullet being fired. Photonic Missile. He shouted. Shiro tore through the fire blanket with relative ease and shot straight towards Endeavor. The flame hero was powerless to stop him as the attack smashed against his chest and forced his body to the end of the tunnel. The result was Endeavor colliding with the wall, which creating a large crater with multiple cracks. However, the impact of the attack itself broke 3 of his ribs, damaged 1 of his lungs, which in turn caused him to cough up blood. Despite this, he managed to catch himself before falling. Shiro stood back slowly to regain his senses. Photonic Missile, depending on how strong it was, normally left him feeling groggy a bit after. Wailing over to Endeavor, Shiro raised his right leg and axe kicked him by the shoulder blades, this time forcing him completely to the ground. Gotta hand it to you, Enji, you're one tough son of a bitch, Shiro complimented. Most people wouldn't even be able to remain conscious after that. Then again, got your rank for a reason. Endeavor glared up at him with blood oozing down his lips. If you're going to kill me, just do it. Shiro laughed. Tempting, but no thanks, he denied. Your son wants to kill you. And me being the nice guy I am, will not take that away from him. I know firsthand what it's like to want to kill the person you hate most. And he had. Only difference was Tuya had yet to do the deed. Whether it brought him peace or emptiness was up to him, but either way, it was something he needed to do. Shiro's thoughts were interrupted by his phone buzzing. Wading through the images, Shiro smiled. It seemed the guests of honor had arrived. However, in doing so he took his eyes off Endeavor. Grabbing the man's legs, Endeavor ignited his flames once more in an attempt to incinerate his foe. Shiro let out a small yelp before the flames consumed him entirely, much to Endeavor's satisfaction. Unfortunately for him, a bright light shone within the inferno before dispelling the flames entirely. Endeavor could see a faint outline of armor, but it quickly faded along with the light. Shiro pulled his leg away and kicked him in the face. That is the second time today you've managed to catch me by surprise, Shiro admitted, sounding impressed. But there won't be a third, I promise you. Mainly because I need to leave now. Running away? Endeavor growled as he got back on his feet, ignoring the pain he was feeling. How cowardly. It's not cowardice, Shiro defended. I've simply got another guest to deal with. The number one idiot in this country who for reasons I can't understand is considered the greatest hero in the world. Endeavor scowled. He was being ditched for All Might again, and by a villain no less. Aw, don't be like that, Shiro said softly. All Might just happens to be the most important person to beat right now. I'd explain why, but I'm a bit tight on time. Fear not, you won't be left alone. I called for a playmate to keep you company. Endeavor frowned. A playmate? Who? Shiro. You fucking slave driver. I was in the middle of an amazing martial arts battle and you ruined it. Are you so weak you can't even handle one hero by yourself? Shouted a familiar angry voice. The sound of wings flapping could be heard a small distance away. Endeavor's eyes whitened. No, it can't be. Stop being such a pouty little bitch, Akuma. Shiro shouted back with equal ferocity. I need to deal All Might, but I don't want to leave Endeavor alone. Hence, why I want you to keep him company. The devil hero turned and saw Endeavor and scowled. The latter of which returned. It had been years since they had seen each other, and yet, their hatred for each other had never dwindled. On second thought, go play with All Might, Akuma snarled. This one is mine. One warning, I will not under any circumstance capture him. If we had to live in the same area, we'd probably end up destroying the entire city while duking it out. Endeavor just glared at Akuma. Perhaps this would be better than defeating Shiro. Shiro was a little, but not entirely surprised that Akuma was doing what he wanted. However, he wasn't about to push further. Turning on his heel, the Hades leader walked away. Have fun, boys, he called out. Try not to destroy the place. No promises, Akuma answered. Raid section. All Might. Niko raised her left hand while accumulating power before slamming it onto the ground, generating immense heat around the area. All Might was livid as the temperature quickly rose above 30 degrees Celsius. So, this is her power, All Might realized. He remembered Midoriya's report describing Niko's quirk. It was similar to Todoroki's, however, unlike him, she could fully control the temperature. Furthermore, while his power came from within, she needed to absorb energy from other sources, such as the sun and moon. Niko continued to increase the heat until she was certain it was just above 40 degrees. Their main strategy would be to wear All Might down and dehydrate him. Symbol of peace or not, he was still human. And like all humans, he would tire from heat and lack of water. The only reason she did not go further was that she genuinely wanted to fight the number one hero. Strong opponents were hard to come by these days, and it was unlikely she would get to fight All Might again after this. Despite the intense heat, All Might raced towards Niko, wind pressure and power gathering in his right fist. Texas Smash. He shouted. He punched straight for her to end the fight quickly. However, much to his surprise, his attack went straight through her. That's when Niko began to fade. What? He exclaimed, confused. A large white beam of combined energies connected with All Might from behind and sent him crashing to the ground. Behind him stood Niko with both arms outstretched and hands with a fading glow. All Might stood back up, albeit steadily. That last attack hurt. What was that? He demanded. Niko gave him a cold look. As if I would explain my abilities to you. You're the number one hero, figure it out on your own. Unlike most, Niko never gave anyone a full insight on her quirk and moves. Personally, she found it stupid since she would just be giving the enemy knowledge to use against her. However, she did give minor descriptions from time to time, provided they discovered it. Niko flipped backwards and unleashed a wave of mixed energy that shot straight towards All Might. Rotating his right arm, All Might punched and released a small tornado. Nebraska Smash. He shouted. All Might's attack overpowered Niko's and unleashed a gale force wind that pushed against her. Despite this, Niko never wavered in stance, nor did she release her quirk. Using his immense speed, All Might arrived in front of Niko. He pulled his right arm back and punched downward. "Detroit smash," he shouted. Once again, the attack went through Niko, who faded away. Seriously, how's she doing that? He thought frustratedly. Another quirk. Support gear. Whatever it was, he needed to figure it out fast. The heat wave was starting to wear him down, and his entire costume was soaking in sweat. From his left side, Niko began to unleash a series of punches and kicks containing solar and lunar energy, which blasted at All Might. The hero put his arms up to defend. Niko's blasts weren't as powerful as the previous, but they still packed a punch. All Might could feel the heat from and the coolness from others. Having had enough, he leapt into the air and spun in a flipping motion before coming down, his right hand extended, and punched the ground. "Blast smash," he shouted. All Might's punch generated a small earthquake that shook through the tunnels and destroyed the surrounding area. Niko was thrown back against the wall while several debris hitting against her, causing a bit of blood to fall from her forehead. However, her illusion remained. All Might was confused as to how there could be two of them, especially since the other one should have disappeared. Hold on a minute, he realized as he examined the environment. This heat wave. That illusion. So, that's what it is. You were using the heat wave to create a mirage of yourself, weren't you? He declared. That's why I kept missing. Niko averted her gaze slightly. Ha. You're smarter than you look, she acknowledged before standing up again. Have you ever been to a desert, All Might? It's the same thing. What Niko did was activate both sides to generate different temperatures to bend light rays and reflect herself, but All Might didn't need to know that. I see, All Might breathed out. His body was now leaking with sweat, and it started to drip from his hands and boots, leaving a small stain where he stood. Although he knew he could hold out, he would need all his strength when fighting Shiro. Which is why he needed to end this now. Niko sensed what he was planning and prepared to defend. Worst case scenario, she would use her ultimate move. Well, ultimate may have been a bit much. That's just what Kitsune called it. As opposed to Shiro and the others, Niko did not give her attacks names because she found it a waste of time. It was others who named them for her. However, she would admit she did like the name Kitsune had given this one. Igniting her hands in opposing energy, she was about to join them together, only to be interrupted by the sound of her phone. Niko briefly glanced at All Might, who halted in movement. Sorry, do you mind? She didn't even bother waiting for a reply. Reading through the message, she narrowed her eyes. Despite her loyalty towards Shiro, he could be impeccably irritating when he wanted to be, especially his timing. And yet, she would not disobey. Holding up her right hand, she focused the energy he had absorbed from the moon, and then slammed it into the ground. This cancelled out the heat wave as the tunnel became much colder. Due to being covered in sweat, All Might shivered at the lower temperature, but managed to keep his composure. It would appear our fight has come to an end, Niko revealed with a bitter tone. Shiro will see you now. What? All Might stammered out, surprised. Don't make me repeat myself, Niko ordered. She then typed in a code on her phone, causing a series of lights to turn on in a straight line. Follow this path. It will lead you to the city. Shiro will see you at the main building on the 13th floor. It will be impossible for you to miss it. All Might was confused as to why Niko was telling him all of this. Do not misunderstand me, she ordered. It's just orders from Shiro. Just like how he wants me to remain out of the action for the rest of the raid. All Might could literally feel the disappointment in her voice. Oh, one more thing. Before you can even think of finishing me off, don't. Shiro wants to fight you at your best, so save your strength. Okay, was the only thing he could say. Normally, he wouldn't do what a villain said, but right now Shiro was a larger threat that needed to be dealt with. Running in the direction he was told, All Might headed to the city to put an end to this once and for all. And to find a bottle of water. Raid section. Endeavor. The two heroes stood across from each other, glaring intensely. Akuma was in his devil form. TCH, Endeavor scowled. So, you were alive. And I was this close to forgetting you. Believe me, I tried forgetting about you, Akuma responded with equal venom. But that's hard when someone, Volcano, keeps bringing you up. Endeavor scowled at the name. Volcano, and by extension his teammates, was a villain he had traded blows with numerous times over the years. Of course, he had won most of the time, but the villain always managed to break out before being properly detained. Given recent information, it made sense that Hades had a hand in it. I'm happy for you though, Akuma's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. You finally found your calling with a group you can fit in with. And there it was. I didn't join Hades willingly. Akuma snapped. They put a fucking bomb in my neck. There's no proof of that, Endeavor countered with a hint of cruelty. Considering your past behavior, not to mention your appearance, it was only a matter of time before you ended up becoming a villain. Akuma didn't answer straight away. The insults Endeavor was throwing were nothing he hadn't heard before. Due to the nature of his quirk and his personality, people often mistook him for a villain. He even held the #1 spot on that racist list for heroes who look like villains. Spout whatever bullshit you want. At least I'm not known for being #2, he pointed out, much to Endeavor's fury. Maybe, but it's higher than yours. He snapped. Actually, you don't have a ranking. Not since you joined Hades. It was true. Akuma's disappearance and lack of work marked the end of his hero career and ranking. Like I give a shit. He snapped back. Why do we even have rankings anyway? Last time I checked, being a hero isn't a competition. Personally, he had never cared much about rank, nor did he see the point of it. He had even met people in Hades who came from countries without hero rankings. If it worked for them, why couldn't Japan do the same? A villain like you could never understand. Endeavor barked. As if I'd want to. Akuma retorted. You what? Screw this shit. Let's just fight already. That has got to be the first thing you have said that I've agreed with. Endeavor acknowledged. Standing back, the heroes ignited their right fists with charged flames. Unlike Endeavor's, Akuma's were navy blue. Flashfire fist, jet burn. Devil's soul, scorching shot. The two fire attacks collided in the center, creating a massive explosion of red and blue flames. The flames quickly spread out among the rubble, much to Endeavor's delight. Running forward, he harnessed all the surrounding heat into his fist and performed a right hook. Vanishing fist, he shouted. Pathetic. The devil hero thought. As Endeavor neared him, Akuma turned to caught Endeavor's arm before pivoting on his right leg, and, using the man's momentum against him, performed an over-the-shoulder reverse. Endeavor landed face first on the ground away from Akuma with his hand returning to normal. Grunting, he got on his hands and knees, however, Akuma was 2 steps ahead of him. He leapt over him while grabbing his arm before flipping him over and placing him in an arbor. Endeavor struggled and squirmed to escape, but Akuma wasn't making it easy for him. When tried to turn over, or reach for his hand, Akuma kicked him right in the face to put him back down. Focusing his fire through his feet, Endeavor propelled himself backwards, taking Akuma with him. Unable to hold on properly, Akuma loosened his grip, giving Endeavor enough time to grab his hand and get on his feet. He then pulled Akuma upward before slamming him back down on the ground. When he didn't let go, Endeavor repeated the process 4 times before Akuma finally had enough and released his grip, but not before double-kicking Endeavor in the face. Not wanting to give him the chance to recover, Endeavor fired point-blank at Akuma, completely consuming him with his flames. Normally, he wouldn't do such a thing, but Akuma had a certain resistance to fire, so he knew he would survive. Akuma let out a scream as he was incinerated before flying up to escape. He flew at Endeavor with incredible speed who tried to fire at him again, only for Akuma hit the ground in front of him, and then deliver a low fire kick to Endeavor's left shin, causing him to grunt in pain and falter in balance. Akuma then pivoted on his right leg, and delivered a 360-degree fire-turning kick to Endeavor's head. Endeavor could have sworn he heard his skull crack as he started to fall to the ground. Surprisingly, the kick did not give him a burn mark. His head felt dizzy from pain, but despite this, he managed to catch himself before falling. Akuma immediately followed up with an axe kick, only for Endeavor to roll out of the way. Facing his enemy, Endeavor blasted himself using his feet forward and catching Akuma by the waist. The result was Akuma being smashed into the wall behind him and coughing up a bit of blood. Before he could retaliate, Endeavor threw Akuma upwards. Gathering fire in his fist, Endeavor shot punched in Akuma's direction and released a violent tornado of fire, at max temperature, that consumed the devil hero. Karmic rays, Hellfire storm. He roared. Og. Akuma screamed. There was a loud thud behind him, and as soon as the fire cleared, Akuma's body could be seen. Finally. I've wanted to do that for such a long time. Endeavor lamented. For years, he and Akuma had been at odds with each other. Their personalities and ideologies just did not mix, and they ended up clashing as a result. Akuma hated him because he looked down on him and saw him as nothing more than a villain, while he hated Akuma because he was not afraid to stand up to him, and because he was a threat to his rank. Up until now though, they had never gotten physical with each other. Although they had seriously wanted to. Son of a bitch. Akuma muttered, much to Endeavor's horror. That hurt. He was mostly immune to fire, however, that had a limit. If it was hot enough, it could wound him. How are you able to move after that? Endeavor asked, completely dumbstruck. That should have knocked you out cold. You kidding me? Akuma asked incredulously. I've taken hits far worse than that. And he was used to pain, but Endeavor didn't need to know that. Meanwhile, Endeavor was fuming over what Akuma said. If that were really the case, then he may have no choice but to use his ultimate move. It was not something he would normally use except against the most dangerous villains, although Akuma technically did qualify. However, his battle with Shiro along with the blows he had sustained from Akuma weakened him. And right now, he was on his last legs. It's all or nothing, he decided. No matter what, I won't lose here. Using his core to shoot himself forward one last time, Endeavor began accumulating heat. Unfortunately, Akuma had his own signature move. I've kept this hidden until now. So, you'll be the first one to actually experience it. Consider yourself lucky, Endeavor the hero from Hell thought as he began to accumulate energy in his horns. Akuma had discovered this ability by accident when his father was teaching him to channel his fire through other parts of his body. When he focused it through his horns, the result was surprising to say the least. As Endeavor neared, a blue glow formed between Akuma's horns. The flame hero prepared to release his most powerful move, however, the devil hero was 2 seconds quicker. Prominence, Endeavor started. Hell's Repentance, Devil's Eye. Akuma shouted as he unleashed his full power. From the tips of his horns, a black and white beam fired at shocking speed and impacted the number 2 hero on the chest and sent him crashing into the wall, which in turn created a massive explosion of dark energy. The explosion reverberated through the tunnels and caused all hostilities to temporarily cease. Everyone thought that an earthquake was occurring. Endeavor barely had time to register what happened before he lost consciousness. The wreckage from the attack was big, with the entire area having been destroyed and the ceiling on the verge of collapse. "Well, what do you know, Dad?" "You were right," Akuma sheepishly admitted as he slumped on the ground, reverting to his original form. "I shouldn't use it in a confined space." Outside Hades, Akuma groaned as he woke up with Manuel on top of him. Around him, he could feel air move across his body, showing he was above water. The texture of sand and the sound of waves softly crashing against the shore revealed he was on a beach. He was bleeding as well. His wounds still fresh from his battle with Kirder and that boy Kai. Manuel wasn't faring much better. Blood trickled down from the side of his helmet. He would need to get that treated soon. "I see you made it out," came a familiar voice. Akuma tilted his head to see Edshot walking towards him with an unconscious Mandalay on his shoulders. From the look of him, he had been roughed up, but it was nothing life-threatening. "More like I was blasted out," Orca corrected. "And you?" "Long story," Edshot answered simply. "Right now, we need to move." "I can't go back in there like this," Orca pointed out. "None of us can." Edshot waved his head. "Not right now." "No, we need a different approach," he explained. "And it involves Izuku Midoriya." 60 years ago. The woman's cries of pain echoed throughout the room as she pushed forward. Good," the nurse complimented. "One more push, Hikari. You can do it." Hikari leaned back, breathing heavily. She was a young woman with white hair, silver eyes, a slim figure, and wore a patient's gown. To the normal eye, she would be considered beautiful. Part of her questioned why she was doing this. It was hard enough to get by in this world with her job, when that was frowned upon by others, but this. If she did this, there would be no turning back. Another part of her wanted this, to give life to someone she never had. To love and cherish someone when no one had done it for her. With the final scream, she pulled all her willpower together and pushed. The pain was excruciating, but she bore through it. Suddenly, a new sound dominated the room. A crying baby. Hikari looked and saw a small figure wrapped up in a blanket in the nurse's arms. "It's a boy," the nurse informed with a smile. Hikari's eyes whitened. She had a son. The nurse brought him closer and handed him to her carefully. Almost instantly, he calmed down in her arms. She noticed a tuft of white hair on his head, the same color as hers. Tears welled in her eyes as she brought her son closer to her chest and embraced him. Her son. Her baby son. She was a mother. Suddenly, she was filled with a feeling of hope, a desire to nurture and protect, feelings she had never felt before now. Her son let out a small cry as she pulled him back to see his eyes open. They were topaz, like his father's. More than likely that would be the only similarity. "Hello there. I'm your mother," she said softly, tears still flowing from her eyes. "It's nice to finally meet you, Shiro." Present day. Hades' main building. Shiro sat in his throne staring at the entrance. Any moment now, All Might would arrive, and he could not wait. It would be one hell of a battle, no question. One that would attract a lot of attention. Shiro sighed in mild annoyance as his time in the shadows was coming to an end. He always knew this day was coming. A day when they could no longer keep their activities and selves completely hidden, but it still saddened him. Part of him relished in the anonymity because it enabled him to act freely at his own leisure without any major interference. Then again, when fighting the number 1 hero, it was bound to come to an end. Still, if he could defeat All Might in front of the country, it would send a message to everyone, hero, villain, and civilian alike, that they were not to be trifled with. That they were the strongest. Emphasis on it. Despite his reputation, Shiro was not arrogant. He had moments, which he had paid dearly for, but other than that he was never arrogant about a situation or when facing someone. His master had taught him that arrogance was the real reason so many met their downfall, and Shiro learned over the years how true it was. He would not hold back against All Might, but he would not underestimate him either. He would fight strategically, and not recklessly. It was the only way he would have a chance of winning. All Might was the symbol of peace for a reason, just as he was the leader of Hades. So, the odds were 50-50, in his opinion. Thinking about it all, Shiro couldn't help but laugh. It's taken so much to get here, he mused. So much hard work, effort, bloodshed, and lawbreaking. And yet, I may lose it all today. Isn't life funny like that? Memories from his childhood, meeting Sensei, to what he is now came flooding back. Shiro let out a small, sad smile. "Mom, Sensei, I hope you are watching from up there," he said softly. "I know this isn't the life either of you wanted me to have, but it is what it is. I wish I could join you, but after everything I've done, I'll be going to the other place." Shiro's smile turned serious. However, I wouldn't go down without a fight. I swore to both your graves I would never do that. With a determined look in his eye, Shiro stared at the ceiling. Watch me. 57 years ago. A 3-year-old Shiro sat in his room coloring a drawing from the book Mommy got him. From what Mommy and Niko, Mommy's friend who looked like a cat, said the picture was a flower, something that grew out of the earth. Shiro had never seen one before, although that applied to a lot of things that existed in the outside world. For a boy of his age, his bedroom, his mother's room, their living area kitchen, basically, this small apartment was his entire world. Not once had he set foot outside. Not even to visit the doctor when he was sick. Mommy asked him never to wander off without her because he was safer here. He didn't really understand why, but he trusted Mommy, so he never questioned it. He did know their home was part of a much larger building owned by Mommy's boss who Shiro had never met but was often told by Mommy to be respectful towards because she gave them a place to live. Thud. 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 OHH. A male's voice moaned loudly. Shiro briefly looked up from his drawing. He knew the voice from past visits, although he had never met the man nor heard his name. It was like that with a lot of people. It had something to do with Mommy's job, which Shiro did not know much about, other than it involved different men and occasionally women coming into Mommy's room. Mommy did something that made them happy, but Shiro did not know what it was. His mother said it brought them money to keep a roof over their heads, so he did not question it. He was a little annoyed at the sounds because it was distracting. Normally, people would be quieter, but exceptions like this one were loud. Shiro had never personally met the man, but he knew he had come over a few times. And quite frankly, he did not like him. In addition to being loud, the man was rude, obnoxious, spouted words Shiro did not understand, but knew they were bad. Mommy had told him not to repeat them again after asking her, insulted Mommy, her boss, and her friends. He never physically hurt any of them, although that was his only decent quality. All in all, he was not a nice man. And yet, for reasons beyond his current understanding, Shiro's mother put up with him, never once getting angry. The one exception was when he asked, how's the little bastard was doing, but Shiro had no idea who that was. Mommy had gotten mad when he said it, really mad, which led to the phrase never being used again. Well, thanks for that, the man said in an upbeat tone as he prepared to leave, much to Shiro's relief. I don't know when I'll be back for another one, but I'll call you in advance. That is if that fugly hippo doesn't make any trouble for me. Until next time, Hikari. And then he was gone. Shiro quickly and quietly closed his book before climbing into his bed. When his mother came to check on him, he pretended to be asleep so that she wouldn't think he had heard any of that. The less trouble he made for her the better. Later that day, there was a knock on the door causing the mother and son to look away from their activities. Shiro was annoyed because he thought he needed to return to his room again, but the look on his mother's face made him think twice. Hikari was confused. She was done for the rest of the day, so there shouldn't have been anyone else. Hikari, it's me, came a stern feminine voice. We need to talk. The cheerful mood his mother was in before vanished and was instantly replaced by one of nervousness. She gazed at Shiro briefly before motioning him to go to his room, as she had done many times. Shiro was a bit unnerved by his mother's expression, but moved nonetheless. After shutting the door, he listened as his mother approached the door. At the door stood a large woman with the appearance of a gray hippo, accompanied by 2 men around her height. She wore a purple dress, lavender scarf and white pearl necklace. She also carried a black and white pipe. Good evening, Madam Kaba, Hikari greeted her boss, sounding calmer than she was. Is there something I can do for you? Right to the point as usual, I see, Kaba mentioned. Good. I heard Kawatari was here earlier. Yeah. He was booked for today, Hikari replied quickly. He left not too long ago. Why? Inhaling some smoke from her pipe and exhaled, much to Hikari's annoyance. Due to his reprehensible actions, he has been banned. He may be allowed to return after a period of time, but until then, he is not to be given any kind of service. If he shows up without me having announced it first, please let me know. Hikari looked visibly stunned. Why? What did he do? He used his quirk on one of the girls, Blossom I believe it was, before dragging her into her room, one of the guards explained. A severe breach of the rules as I'm sure you're aware, said the other. Indeed, it was. Quirk usage was expressly forbidden in the brothel even by staff members, barring security. Of course, in the event that customers got violent, they were allowed to them in self-defense. However, afterwards, the incident would be investigated by a man with a truth-based quirk under the madam's employment. Violation of this rule meant the customer would be banned for a certain amount of time, though repeats would make it permanent, or the staff losing their job. Then, why was he here earlier if? Hikari started. She was away on a job, so we were not able to ascertain the truth until now, Kaba interrupted taking another smoke. As annoyed as she was at the smoke, Hikari was somewhat relieved she would have a break from Kawatari, given his vile and unbearable nature. I for one am glad he is not coming back, Kaba exhaled. Good customer aside, he has been the biggest pain in my backside since he first showed up. A couple weeks off from him should do me some good. Why would you let him in if you don't like him? Shiro questioned through his slightly open door. Doesn't that just make your job harder? Hikari jumped at Shiro's sudden appearance. The guards exchanged uncomfortable looks since children were not common down here, for obvious reasons. Kaba narrowed her eyes. So, this is Hikari's boy, she mused. I'm so sorry, madam, Hikari quickly apologized. Shiro, go back too. No, Kaba silenced. I like a bit of spirit. Her eyes locked onto Shiro's. Come out where I can see you, boy. It's not polite to talk behind closed doors. To her relief and surprise, the boy came out. Relief because it showed the boy had manners, and yet surprise because the look he gave her indicated no fear, only distrust, which she found quite odd for a boy his age. It seems your mother educated you well on manners, boy. Shiro eyed her warily but remained silent. Now, about your question, Shiro. You are correct in the assumption it makes my job harder, Kaba admitted. In fact, working with individuals like him makes me hated from time to time. However, by working with people like Kiwatari, there is more to gain than there is to lose, so my personal feelings should not matter. Tell me, do you know why your mother works? To make money and support us, Shiro recited like he had been told before. Niko said the same thing. Kaba nodded. That is correct. And to do that, she must work with trustworthy individuals like Niko, and even some she hates to get the job done and get paid. Whether we like the person or not does is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is we get what we are owed. Shiro's eyes wavered in what Kaba assumed was him slowly understanding. It happens to everyone, and regrettably, it will happen to you when you are older. Hearing this, Shiro's expression morphed into a glare. He already hated the idea, so why would he go through with it? On the off chance you don't, you will be extremely lucky, but I doubt it, the madam sighed. No one ever is. Shiro wanted to argue with her so badly, but ultimately refrained because he did not want to get mommy in trouble. I understand, he pouted. But I still don't like it. And I will not force you to like it, Kaba assured. I will not force anybody under my roof to like it. However, it is what it is, and nothing said or done will change that. Hikari grimaced when she heard under my roof, because she did not know how long it lasted. She was worried Madame Kaba would force Shiro to work one day, though she hoped it would be in security, not a prostitution. Truthfully, Hikari did not like her job. If she could have had any other one, if there was any other life option for her, she would have grabbed onto it without hesitation. But one bad thing led to another, and here she was stuck in this life with no way to escape. The only good that had come from it was the few friends she had made, and most of all Shiro. She was lucky Madame Kaba had allowed her to keep and let him live with her. Pregnancies were not specifically forbidden, but they were discouraged. A child like Shiro being born in the brothel was very rare. Will that man be gone a long time? Shiro asked hopefully. A couple of months, yes. Why? Kaba replied. He's annoying, Shiro responded bluntly. Whenever he's over here I can always hear his voice whining, and other times he's rude about people. A little while ago he called someone a fugly hippo, whatever that is. Hikari's eyes widened in horror, while the man looked away uncomfortably. Madame Kaba smiled sweetly at Shiro to hide her rage. Oh, really? And tell Shiro, what else does he say when he is here? Shiro, being the child he was, didn't understand the severity of the situation, nor did he see a reason to lie to his mother's boss. And so, over the next 20 minutes, Shiro proceeded to tell the audience all about Kiwatari's visits, the people he mocked, his personal life, and some illegal practices. By the time he was finished, Hikari was on the verge of fainting. Her son had heard all of that when she thought he was always asleep. Madame Kaba was fuming. The couple of months would not be enough, it seemed. No, she needed to go further than that. Hikari, why am I only hearing this now? Kaba asked sternly but calmly. And from your son, no less. Client confidentiality, she responded weakly. What happens in our rooms is supposed to stay there. Also, I didn't want to lose you a customer who pays as much as he does. As for Shiro, I thought he was asleep during those times. The madam inwardly scowled. That was a good reason. Still, she wouldn't let it deter her. Kiwatari was going to learn what happened when he didn't respect her rules. Your boy is smart, Hikari. Madame Kaba turned on her heel and walked out. I hope he stays that way. When she was gone, Hikari released a deep breath she didn't realize she had been holding in. That could have gone worse in so many ways. Meanwhile, Shiro was just staring at the door confused. Did I do something wrong? Present day. All Might ran through the tunnels towards the city. His suit was still gushing with sweat from his battle with Niko, as evidenced by the trail he was leaving behind, but other than that he was fine. A dim light appeared towards the end of the tunnel, causing him to increase his speed. This is it. It has to be. All Might decided. Bursting through the entrance, he came face to face with a sight that both awed and infuriated him. The report young Midoriya had submitted was not exaggerating when it described Hades' main base as a city. He marveled at the design and effort that had gone into constructing it. What made him angry was the fact that it was built off hard forced labor from people who had their freedom and rights stripped from them. And if his time in the States taught him anything, it was that slavery was foul and was worthy of being locked up in Tartarus. God damn it. How did I manage to get this far without any one of us ever knowing? All Might lamented. What frustrated All Might the most was how dangerous Hades had grown without alerting anyone, even underground heroes, to what was happening. Admittedly, their strategy involving a city with little crime made sense as to how, but it still infuriated him how a threat like Hades existed under their noses for decades. That all ends today, All Might swore. Even if I have to tear this entire place apart and beat every member one by one, just like I did with All for One's followers, I swear we'll destroy Hades and save everyone. Looking up, he saw a large building in the city center. And I'll start with Shiro. And with that, he took off towards his target until he stopped at the side of a vending machine. Correction. I will start with Shiro after I have had some water. He decided. It would be a bad idea to fight him dehydrated. Hades' main building. Shiro observed the holographic monitor with an amused expression. All Might had just consumed 4 bottles of water in quick succession and was now going for a 5th. Niko really did a number on him, he remarked. He wasn't all that surprised, to be honest, but still impressed. Niko could dominate her opponents with her quirk and fighting skills, but she always preferred to fight creatively, rather than rely on brute force. A trait many villains unfortunately lacked. Most of them relied too much on power half of the time, rather than properly honing their abilities and strategizing. Shiro understood though. With guys like All for One and All Might around, it was hard not to see strength as the most important. It was why he respected people like Eraserhead and Himiko Toga, who used weaker quirks cleverly to outsmart their enemies. After all, he had been the same with his quirk until a little training and strategizing turned him into the force he was today. Smash. Shiro was immediately alerted to the sound of something breaking downstairs. It would seem the guest of honor has arrived. Shiro let out a small smile. Good thing I left everything. Smash. The doors literally blew apart as All Might punched his way in. The expression he wore was as furious as the time at the USJ when the League first attacked. It's over now, Shiro. All Might stepped forward, generating a small shockwave that lifted the dust. Why? Because I am here. Shiro stared at him blankly before assessing the small carnage. Was that really necessary? Shiro shot All Might an irritated look. I left everything unlocked so you wouldn't have to break them. I'm not an idiot. I know these doors couldn't stop you, so why? Ascends, All Might shrugged off the accusations. And another thing, Shiro interrupted, clearly not finished. What is with the whole I am here thing? I can physically see you, not to mention blowing off the doors was a clear sign you were here. So, just why? Is it meant an intimidation tactic, because let me tell you I have seen far worse, or is it just a catchphrase you use when on the job? All Might could hardly believe his ears. Shiro was actually complaining about trivial things while a full-on war was occurring. Do you even know what's happening right now? He asked incredulously. You hero guys are raiding my base at home in a desperate bid to rescue everyone who's been held captive. Shiro rolled his eyes. It's not rocket science. Then why? All Might started. Am I bringing all these small insignificant details to your attention? Shiro finished. Because you are the one doing the mass might. Also, despite what you think, whenever someone breaks into another person's home and destroys their property, the owner is always upset. Property you built off slavery, All Might spat back. Shiro gave him the bored look. Oh, I know what I've done, and why I did it, he admitted nonchalantly. I make no excuses. Explanations perhaps, but I never sugarcoat anything or make it into something it's not, even if I do think it's justified. Shiro never liked using his past to justify what he did, aside from the rules he set, but mostly to explain why he did the things he did. For him, using his past felt like he was using his mother and teacher. They were part of his reasons, yes, but he did not actually like using them. Justified. All Might breathed. You kidnap children and force them to work for you. Do you have any idea how traumatic that must be for them? Yes, Shiro stated uninterestedly. Although, probably not as traumatic as watching attempted rape and then murder. All Might's blood froze. His eyes widened in utter horror. But Midoriya, he said you didn't, he muttered. I don't. Shiro snapped furiously. I would never take part in a disgusting act like that. The murder, that was me. The minute I saw that waste of human flesh try and have his way with one of the students after apparently doing it to someone else, I ripped out his fucking heart. All Might winced at the description. The bastard's blood spewed all over the girl, Shiozaki I think her name was, and then I had Yumi, and Utada to take her and the rest of the newcomers away. Shiro's face became somber as he reflected on the victims and how distraught they were. It was like Tenem all over again. The amount of therapy they are all going through would surprise you. All Might felt conflicted. On one hand, he was relieved Shiozaki had been saved from something so terrible along with the other children. On the other hand, he was angry because it was Shiro's fault they were there, to begin with. However, he was somewhat relieved that the man had enough humanity to have them properly treated. You really hate the act, don't you? He said softly. The leader of Hades stared at the ground before looking back at the symbol of peace, with a neutral, yet solemn, expression. More than you could possibly imagine. 55 years ago. Hikari added more parts to Shiro's central building as he searched for a specific piece. The Lego city wasn't too big, but it did have a unique design. A large circle divided up into 4 sections with a huge building at the center. It was Shiro's opinion that the owner of the city, him, should live in the tallest building for everyone else to see. Hikari didn't know where he had gotten the idea from, but she wasn't about to question his childish logic. If anything, she was just happy he was having fun. Aside from her, this apartment, his toys, and his quirk which emitted light like hers, Shiro did not have much else in the world. At the age of 5, he was not in school alongside other children, not that she could afford it, so all education came from her and her friends. The books they provided also proved useful. Despite this, Shiro had proven to be quite intelligent for his age by quickly picking up language, reading, and writing. Still, they were happy, at least as far as they could get. Found it! Shiro exclaimed as he took out his small flag and placed it on top. Truthfully, he didn't care that the city was complete. He was just happy to be spending time with his mommy on her day off. No customers, no colleagues, no distractions, just him and her. Knock. 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 The sound of someone banging on the door instantly drew their attention, and Shiro scored. There wasn't supposed to be anyone visiting today. Even Niko said she would be busy. Hikari hoped it wasn't Madame Kaba, though she would have announced her presence. As the person on the other side continued to bang against the door, Shiro's annoyance increased. They were ruining his time with Mom. Just answer so they can go away, Shiro pleaded. Hikari got up and walked to the door. However, when she opened it, she was met with the sight of someone she had not expected. About fucking time. A voice sneered. You know it's rude to keep customers waiting, especially regular ones. Kuwatari, Hikari murmured. What are you doing here? Shiro's eyes widened. It had been 2 years since he heard that man's voice and name, but he had never forgotten. And now, this was his first time seeing him. Kuwatari was just barely above his mother's height with a lanky build. He had short brown hair, vicious green eyes with slits much like a snake, and a small beard covering his face. What do you think? I'm making up for lost time, Kuwatari said. And you should be doing the same, so get in. You were banned, Hikari reminded. I was banned. Now I'm not, he argued. Madame Kaba would have informed us if you were allowed back first, Hikari argued back. As a matter of fact, I would like to verify it first. If I wasn't allowed back, how am I standing here? Kuwatari sneered. That fugly hippo is under new management now, courtesy of Eris, meaning I have the go-ahead. Hikari frowned. This was the first she had heard of it. However, the name Kuwatari dropped concerned her. Eris was a criminal group notorious for human and drug trafficking. The brothel had some of their members come over from time to time to relieve some stress, but never anything hostile. Be that as it may, I'm on my day off, Hikari countered. If you want, I can make time tomorrow, but not now. Her response only served to anger him as she tried to close the door only for him to keep it open with his hand. Screw that, he shouted. I've been waiting years to come back. I'm entitled to this. And I will give it to you, tomorrow, Hikari said. Fed up with waiting, Kuwatari grabbed her by the wrist and activated his quirk, temporarily paralyzing her so she couldn't fight back. He then moved in and shut the door to prevent any interruptions. What do you think you're doing? Shiro yelled outraged to see the man in his home. Kuwatari glanced at the boy surprised. He had forgotten Hikari had a brat. So, you're the little bastard, huh, he said. Not that it's any of your business, but your mom and I have work to do. So, why don't you fuck off someplace where you won't cause a disturbance? No, you don't. Shiro declared defiantly. My mom is off today. She doesn't have to do anything with you. Kuwatari gave him a look before walking over and dragging him up by the arm. Slap. Kuwatari's right hand connected with Shiro's face and sent him crashing to the ground. Shiro, for his part, blinked in shock as he held his hand to his stinging face. That man just hit him. He hit him. Not even his mother had done that. However, instead of crying, much to Kuwatari's surprise, Shiro activated his quirk and illuminated the whole room with his body. Kuwatari let out a growl as he was blinded by the light and fell backwards. Shiro felt a small sense of pride for overpowering the grown-up. However, it was short-lived upon Kuwatari getting back up with his eyes closed and diving towards Shiro. Being much slower than the man, Shiro couldn't dodge as he grabbed a hold of him and activated his quirk. Shiro felt his body freeze as his quirk deactivated. You little shit. It seems your mother forgot to discipline you properly. Oh well, I guess I'll have to rectify that, he growled as terror filled Shiro. Slap. Kuwatari's backfist connected with Shiro's face and sent him only for the older man to pull him and smack him on the other side of his face. This is what happens to children when they misbehave. Kuwatari positioned Shiro directly on his knee. And this is one of the more classic punishments. Hopefully, after this, you'll learn to keep your mouth shut. Kuwatari brought his hand down hard on Shiro's backside, with each strike becoming harder and more painful. Shiro couldn't even cry out because he was still paralyzed. Kuwatari on the other hand was having a blast. It was nice to beat someone up for a change, perhaps he should do it more often, though he decided Shiro would be a one-time victim, because it wouldn't do him any favors with Hikari. Still, that didn't mean it would be their last encounter. The kid was as cute as his old woman, so he was sure to be a looker in the future. Maybe he would take up a job here in the future. Kuwatari would certainly be willing to visit. He was so distracted by what he was doing that he didn't notice the mother had gotten back to her feet with an expression of pure rage plastered across her face. This man had shown up out of nowhere, tried to force himself on her when she said, use his quirk on her, and then had the audacity to beat her son right in front of her. There was only one course of action now. Quietly picking up a broomstick, she ran over and whacked it across the left side of Kuwatari's face. Kuwatari screamed as collapsed to the side while Shiro sprawled onto the floor below. Hikari pulled him away into her arms where she inspected him. Shiro, are you alright? She asked desperately. The boy wasn't moving, likely because of the quirk, and he wasn't responding to her. Ugh, you bitch. Kuwatari growled, struggling to get up. Look what you've done. His ear was bleeding from the attack, and blood flowed down onto his jacket. Get out. Hikari ordered with a rare fury in her voice. And don't even think of coming back. That did not sway Kuwatari in the slightest. If anything, it made him angrier. You can't do that, he screamed. As an employee, you have an obligation. I don't have to do anything. Hikari screamed back. You barged into my home on my day off, used your quirk on me, and worst of all, you assaulted my son. So, no Kuwatari, I don't have to open my legs for you. Instead, I'm going to report you for your blatant violation of the rules, and make sure Madame Kaba kicks you out again. This time, permanently. She kept a tight grip on the broom during her declaration, her eyes never once leaving her attacker. By now, several people would have heard the commotion, meaning it was only a short amount of time before somebody arrived to help. Kuwatari, on the other hand, was unwilling to accept any consequences for his actions. In his mind, he had done nothing wrong. He approached her politely asking for a service that had long been overdue, and yet she rudely refused him, and gave him a serious wound. Did they not care if he lost his ear? He had no choice but to use his quirk and discipline her child for trying to stop him. They were to blame for his behavior, not him. That's right. It was all their fault. And if Hikari wouldn't give him what he was owed, then he would take it by force. Without warning, he threw Shiro's small chair at her, forcing her to bring up the broom in defense. Kuwatari ran at her with his arm outstretched, ready to use his quirk. In response, Hikari activated her own. The room was illuminated again with the mother shining even more intensely than her son had. Kuwatari cried out while covering his eyes with one of his arms. Due to his lack of sight, he failed to notice the drawing books on the floor, leading him to trip with his arms still extended. He shoved Hikari at the stomach and activated his quirk, paralyzing her. Unfortunately, he had put a bit too much force into his shove as she fell backwards, and crack, smacked the back of her head perfectly across the edge of her bedroom door. Hikari's form lay there frozen, her eyes wide with shock, as blood slowly began to ooze from the back. Seeing as the light had dispersed, Kuwatari opened his eyes and glanced at Hikari, and then the blood. Shit. He muttered as he deactivated his quirk. Hikari, are you alright? When he didn't get an answer, he started panicking. Hey, stop fucking around. Answer. Mommy, Shiro called, having finally recovered. He stared at his mother's body, not fully sure of what was happening. Why isn't she moving? Why isn't she speaking? Why is she bleeding? 100 questions plagued his mind as he turned to the only other occupant in the room who was shaking her body, but getting no response. Shit. Fuck. He swore. The terror was evident in his voice. They're gonna blame me for this, and then I'll be. He then looked at Shiro. This is your fault. You're the reason she's dead. How he ever came to that conclusion nobody knows. Perhaps the irrational part of his mind thought it would be a good idea to blame Shiro for his actions, despite being the one to instigate it. And they. No. Screw this shit. I'm not getting punished for something you did. With that, the man fled like the coward he was, leaving little Shiro alone with his mother's corpse. Mommy, Shiro approached her. Mommy, what's wrong? He couldn't understand what was happening or why tears were welling up in his eyes. Why wouldn't you answer me, Mommy? Why can't you move, Mommy? Why are you hurt? What was this strong pain in his chest? Mommy. Mommy. Desperation began to enter his voice. How can I help you, Mommy? How can I make you better? Hikari. Shiro. Niko's voice rang out. Is everything, oh my god? Shiro turned to face her, tears falling from his eyes. Niko, Mommy got hurt. Can you help her? He asked pleadingly. Niko began to cry as she rushed to Shiro and pulled him into a hug while uttering, I'm so sorry to him repeatedly. Shiro didn't understand. Why was Niko sorry? What has she done wrong? What did he do wrong? Later. Okay, boy. It's time to go, one of Madame Kaba's guards instructed. Shiro stood up and followed. Throughout the walk, neither of them uttered a word. Shiro barely registered the man's presence who, despite his calm demeanor, was nervous for the boy. After Hikari's death, they had searched for Kawatari only to be halted by Eris's men, who informed them that they would handle Kawatari's punishment. Normally, they would argue, but given the current circumstances, they relented. Of course, the problems didn't stop there. The leader of Eris requested to take Shiro, seeing as he had no other guardian. This one madam had argued against and even tried to reason with him. Hell, everyone in the brothel was against it, especially Niko, because the idea of sending a grieving 5-year-old to a place like that was just sick. However, their pleas fell on deaf ears, or in Niko's case silenced. "Ah, so this is the boy," a cool voice murmured. Shiro looked up to see a man wearing a black biker jacket, black leather pants and boots. The man was shirtless with his abs out for everyone to see. He possessed long dark hair that traveled down to his waist and red eye on the right, while the other was covered with a black eye patch. He looked Shiro up from head to toe as if he was valuing him. Shiro did not like it, and because he did not like it, he shot the man a glare. "Oh," the man snorted, amused. "This one has a bit of fight in him." He then got in Shiro's personal space, much to his displeasure, and smirked. "We'll have to do something about that, won't we? In the meantime, the name's Yami Himitsu, and as of this moment, you are my slave and I, your master. Nice to meet you." Eris main base. What happened after was Shiro being led away by Yami, our master as he was supposed to call him now, and several men into a van, something Shiro found intriguing because he had never seen one before. The whole sensation of driving felt strange to Shiro, but otherwise, it was okay. He noticed none of the guards sparing him a glance, just staring straight with blank expressions which he found a bit weird. He refrained from saying anything because he wasn't fully comfortable around them. The journey lasted less than an hour, and when they arrived, they placed a bag over his head and escorted him by the arms. It was at this point Shiro started to panic and struggle. However, it was useless against the older and stronger men. Warning: the following scene is very dark, uncomfortable, and may trigger some people. You may skip it if you like, since you can guess what happens. But you have been warned. Eventually, they came to a halt and removed the bag before throwing him into a small cell with a toilet, sink, and 3 mattresses with blankets. It was very different to his room at home, and he didn't like it. "Not to your liking, I take it," Yami mused. "I will admit, it's a step down from what that whore was providing you. However, I assure you it's only temporary. After we're done here, you'll be moving in with an older roommate. A decent man, all things considered, and a competent fighter. I expect you to learn from him." "And if I don't?" Shiro said before he could stop himself. Yami smiled. It was a cruel smile with a hint of joy. It was as if he was happy Shiro spoke back. And in a way, he was. That would be a big mistake. Shiro suddenly felt himself being dragged down to the floor by an invisible force. "Just like what you did. Here's the thing, Shiro, this whole master-slave relationship, you don't talk back to me, you don't talk shit to me, in fact, you don't talk at all unless I say so. If you do, well, I don't want to spoil the punishments. Otherwise, you won't be surprised." Shiro didn't like the way he was talking. He tried to use his quirk, however, the light was blocked by a black substance oozing over his body. Looking around, he saw the entire room was covered to the point that only he and Yami were visible. "Don't even bother. My quirk lets me control darkness, meaning yours won't have a single effect on me," Yami sneered. "You're not at that brothel anymore, Shiro. Here you will work, fight, and fuck to survive just like everyone else. I'm going to demonstrate the third now, but Kawatari will show you the rest later." Yami started to undress while the darkness held Shiro down. "First thing you gotta do is take your clothes off, second open your legs, and third, well, I'll show." Shiro was scared, more than he had ever been in his life. He wanted his mom. He wanted Niko. He wanted to go home. He wanted to play with his toys, read his books, and sleep on his own bed. He wanted anywhere other than with this man. "Now, let's begin," Yami breathed on his face. Shiro began to cry. His years in hell had begun. Present day. "Before we start, I should warn you. This won't be like your fight with All for One. Oh, no. Unlike him, I don't rely on raw power alone. All Might had suspected as much." Izuku's report detailed that Shiro's quirk wasn't powerful on its own, but through sheer amounts of work and training, kind of like best genius. "Now then, that's enough talk, don't you think? You and the rest of the pros came here for a reason, did you not? So, what say you and I give them a show they'll never forget?" Toshinori Yagi. All Might's eyes widened in shock. How did Shiro know who he was? His name and identity were a national secret, so no one should have known. The only logical explanation was that All for One told him. Did that mean he knew about One for All as well? Then again, why would All for One tell anyone about that? The fewer people that knew about it meant the less chance it could be stolen by someone else. Whichever the case, he would deal with it after arresting Shiro. "Let's." All Might snarled as he got into a fighting stance. Likewise, Shiro got into one of his own with his right arm becoming immersed in light. Several seconds later, a gauntlet with several sharp edges had formed. Texas. Bluster. The two men launched themselves aiming straight for each other's fists. Smash. Gauntlet. The two attacks collided and generated a miniature storm that reverberated around the entire room. Shiro used his quirk to dig his heels into the ground to prevent himself from being pushed back, while also putting power into his arm to keep it together. The result was All Might's attack breaking through and sending Shiro flying. All Might advanced forward to knock him out quickly, only for Shiro to send out several orbs of light from his hands. Rapid-fire light orb. All Might folded his arms across his chest, making an X shape, halted on one leg, and then released a double chop. Carolina smash. The orbs blew in different directions, damaging several parts of the room. In addition, some of them went into Shiro as he crashed through his throne. Shit. That actually hurt, Shiro thought. I can see why he's called number 1. Steadily standing up, Shiro barely managed to put up some armor, as All Might was instantly in front of him, and punched him square in the stomach. In spite of the protection, the attack caused Shiro to cough up some blood, as he was sent crashing through the wall, creating a view into the city. Shiro managed to hold onto the building using a rope made from his power. In pulling himself back inside, he started to spin forwards while releasing several waves of pure light through his legs. The attack struck All Might, who defended using his arms. Unbeknownst to the symbol, the action had a secondary purpose. By spinning repeatedly, Shiro was accumulating energy while increasing his velocity. So, when he came back through the hole, he shot straight towards All Might with increased speed and strength, while still spinning in a circular motion. Photonic wheel saw. The attack collided on top of All Might's head, causing him to smash face first into the ground. The impact of which created a small crater and bust All Might's lip. Ugh, Shiro moaned dizzily. This is why I never use that move. Such strength. All Might thought, bewildered. Not many can make me bleed. Before he could, Shiro leapt up and summoned several light rays. Light spears. The attack rained down on All Might, who had gotten to his knees, and rotating his arm he punched upwards, creating a small tornado. Nebraska smash. The tornado easily blew away the spears and almost sent Shiro crashing through the roof. However, Shiro managed to pivot himself and land directly on the ceiling upside down, with one leg stretched out and the other bent, still held back by the wind. Letting out a smile, Shiro brought his legs together and shot down headfirst, and started rapidly spinning his body, while amassing speed and energy. Photonic missile. Unlike his battle with Endeavor, this missile was faster, more focused, and way more powerful due to the distance provided between them. All Might should have moved, but instead, he chose to unleash another smash. Gathering his strength, he focused one for all's power into his arms, and performed a double uppercut that unleashed a gale force wind. Alabama smash. The two attacks collided and released another storm over the room, with neither man giving up. For Shiro, in keeping his current motion, he managed to use the wind to strengthen his attack even further, as he slowly began to pierce through it. Eventually, he collided headfirst with All Might's fists, which held him in place. All Might, try as he might, was struggling to hold on as the human bullet continued to push against him. It was made even more difficult by the fact that the light from Shiro's attack was burning his hands. When he was pushed down with his legs barely holding on, he swapped to holding Shiro in place with his open hands, only to get the same results. After 30 seconds of painful standstill, All Might's legs caved and Shiro's photonic missile went through, and struck All Might directly on the chest and into the ground, causing the crater to expand in size and damage. The impact was so strong it broke 2 of All Might's ribs and forced to cough up blood. No sound came out of his mouth as he struggled to breathe, and yet the pain of the attack was very high. Shiro wasn't faring much better. The recoil from photonic missile tossed his body a few meters away from All Might, in a manner that was similar to a ragdoll being thrown away. Compared to his battle with Endeavor, the after effects were much worse. Shiro lay on his back breathing steadily as he stared at the ceiling with blurry vision. He felt sick, like he was about to throw up. It was a miracle he hadn't already. It took more than a minute for him to stand up again, and even then, his legs were wobbly. The impact from his attack caused a tiny part of his forehead to burst, leading to blood oozing down the center, over his nose, and on the sides of his mouth. Ugh, this is exactly why I don't use it that much, he thought dizzily. The greater the power, the worse the recoil. That was a risky move, All Might muttered as he steadily got back up. I know. It's not one I use that often, but against a hero like you I can't afford to hold back, Shiro retorted. The same applies to you, does it not? All Might chuckled. For once, we agree on something. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.